We're going to be reading two articles about women's rights during World War I. The first is Mighty Women of World War I. The second is Mobilizing Woman Power. Mighty Women of World War I by Belinda Davis. A century ago, as nations and empires began mobilizing to send 65 million men to war, millions of women across the globe moved in to fill the holes created in civilian society. From Britain to Bosnia to Baghdad, across the United States and Europe and India and Africa, women would become single heads of household in unprecedented numbers. They would serve directly on the battlefields as nurses and ambulance drivers and cooks. Yet they also had to keep their nation's home fronts running, moving into men's jobs, from smelting iron to driving streetcars to plowing fields, as well as working to administer new public and private organizations in support of the war. The war changed life for women, and it changed the women themselves. When men returned from war, they inevitably tried to reassert their dominance in family and society. But their own broken conditions and circumstances at home challenged these attempts. Women once again had to navigate a tricky terrain laid by men, yet women had displayed to the world and to themselves their competence in total war. Indeed, the war created a lasting legacy for women, marked by new political rights in many countries, and marked also by widespread and enduring anxiety over rising feminine power. The next article is Mobilizing Woman Power. The author, Harriet Stanton Blanche, was the daughter of suffragist Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and a suffragist and women's rights activist in her own right. During World War I, she was the head of the Women's Land Army, an organization that put women to work in the agricultural field. In 1918, she authored Mobilizing Woman Power about women's roles in the war effort and encouraging women to enter the workplace. These are a few excerpts from that article. Scarcity of labor is not only certain to grow, but the demands upon the United States for service are increasing by leaps and bounds. America must throw the manpower into the trenches, must feed herself, must contribute more and ever more food to the hungry populations of Europe, must meet the old industrial obligations and respond to a whole range of new business requirements. When Europe went to war, the world had been suffering from depression a year and more. Immediately on the outbreak of hostilities, whole lines of business shut down. Unemployment became serious. There were idle hands everywhere. Germany, of all the belligerents, rallied most quickly to meet war conditions. Unemployment gave place to a shortage of labor sooner there than elsewhere. Great Britain did not begin to get the pace until the middle of 1915. The business situation in the United States upon its entrance into the war was the antithesis of this. For over a year, depression had been superseded by increased industry, high wages, and greater demand for labor. The country, as measured by the ordinary financial signs, by its commerce, by its labor market, was more prosperous than it had been for years. Tremendous requisitions were being made upon us by Europe, and to the limit of available labor, we were answering them. Then, into our economic life, with industrial forces already working at high pressure, were injected the new demands arising from changing the United States from a people as unprepared for effective hostilities as a baby in its cradle into a nation equipped for war. There was no unemployment, but on the contrary, shortage of labor. The country calls for everything and all at once, like the spoiled child on suddenly waking. It must have, and without delay, ships, coals, cars, cantonments, uniforms, rifles, and food. How can the needs be supplied, and with 1.5 million of men dropping work besides? The war may furnish the spark for the needed revolution. Manpower is not available. Woman power is at hand. A new labor force always brings ideas and ideals peculiar to itself. May not women as fresh recruits in a land army stamp their likes and dislikes on farm life? Their enthusiasm may put staleness to rout, and the group system of women land workers, already tested in the crucible of experience, may bring to the farm the needed antidote to isolation. Women in America must shoulder as nobly as have the women of Europe this duty. They must answer their country's call. Let them see clearly that the desire of their men to shield them from possible injury exposes the nation and the world to actual danger.